pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just at the onset of the meeting, I'm going to call out 3 agenda items that are going to be requesting continuances. We'll continue them at the time, but anybody in the room who's here for those, they don't need to stay because we will not conduct any business on them tonight. That's 242-1710 0 North Main Street. That's the fire department access ramp to the Merrimack River for emergencies. It's 242-1711 42 Foster Street.
No, that's on.
Oh, sorry, that way. Thank you. I had marked it and it crossed it out. And then under general business, there's going to be a certificate of compliance request that's pending for 1049 Salem Street, and they're not quite ready to have that, so we're likely to continue that when we get to that item. So if anybody's in the room for those 2 items, there's no action that's going to take place. So with that aside, we're dealing with the first order. First item is an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation.
We have 1 set of minutes, sorry. 5/10, 2017, and Deb read them and reviewed them.
You have read.
I have.
You ready to move the minutes?
I am.
I'm sorry,
I
thank
will
you.
move and approve the minutes for May the 10th, 2017.
Doug? Deb made the motion.
Second.
And you're seconding it? Yeah, okay. And approval of the minutes, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the minutes are adopted. Thank you. Now the first order of business is an ANRAD for 242-1704, 189 Willow Street, and let's see, Patrick and Bill's here.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Patrick Seacamp of Seacamp Environmental Consulting. Also here tonight is Tim Tanner from J. Tropiano Incorporated, and that is the client.
Okay.
And we are here with an abbreviated, abbreviated notice of resource area delineation filing. This is our second time sort of discussing this project with the commission. We actually had come in early April, and we had initially flagged the wetlands on the site and around the perimeter of the site. Jen had gone out at that time, reviewed the line. The site is problematic, which I will get into briefly in a minute. As a result, I went back out and, if you will, sharpened my pencil point and redelineated portions of the interior portion of the site with a bunch of small isolated wetland pockets. That delineation was again subsequently reviewed in the field by Jen, and that is what we are presenting here tonight on the revised plan. I also put together a wetland delineation report, which sort of gives a very detailed description of the whole history. I won't bore you with all the details, but what I'd like to do is just briefly give the commission a flavor of what happened on this site. The site had an approved ANRAD for the original wetland delineation, which primarily is the A, B, C, and D flag lines, which is tracing it. It's the perimeter wetland all the way around the upland, what was then the total upland pad or portion of the site. The site is quite a large site. There's a lot of wetlands, forested wetlands around it. There's a small upland hole, if you will, in the center of the site. As a result of that ANRAD, a notice of intent was filed and approved by the North Andover Conservation Commission, and construction, with that approved order of conditions, construction on the site actually got started. Erosion control was put in place. A wetland crossing was built using a culvert. Utilities were run onto the site and are currently stubbed off on the site. The plaques, they even got so far as to put the North Andover conservation plaques on all the trees, identifying the 25-foot no cut, no clear zone. A lot of material was moved around. Trees were cut off the buildable portion of the site. As a result of moving the material around, a lot of the soil was scraped. The stumps were pulled. It created a lot of pockets, stump holes, ruts, and soil movement That was around 2008, I think, when that was
That's
all.
when I was first here, 8 or 9, yeah.
Yeah. The site activities then stopped, and this project was more or less abandoned for a while at that point. In the interim, those pockets that were left as a result of soil movement, running construction activity in the constructing what was at that time a legally approved two-story commercial building, about a little over 7,000 square feet, parking lot, appurtenances, all of that activity, that initial activity, created a lot of disturbance on the site. Fast forward to 2017, and we have a lot of pole stand, small trees and shrubs that are currently growing on the site, 1 inch, 2 inch diameter trees. We have a lot of herbaceous stuff. In the holes, a lot of them are ruts, or if you can imagine, they cut a stump and then they turn the stump up, and that hole that was left as a result of turning that stump has created wetland pockets. I've gone through and I've delineated all the little substantial pockets that have evidence of standing water sometime during the year for a period long enough to drive some hydric soil development, wetland vegetation, and hydric soils as a result of the water sitting there. Many of those pockets are well under the 1,000 square feet to be jurisdictional under the town of North Andover's bylaw. Those would not be considered isolated land subject to flooding under the State Wetlands Protection Act, and in fact, in my opinion, likely would not rise to an Army Corps of Engineers jurisdictional concern, all of which collectively, these pockets are well under the 5,000 square feet, including the 600 or so square feet that was already filled as a result of the early approved activity. So we're well under the 5,000 square feet for core concern. We're sort of in a category 1 non-reporting situation if we were to go forward and develop the site. There is one area that is over 1,000 square feet, and it is delineated by the I wetland line. I'm tracing it right now. It is the only area that is outside of the PVW boundary that would rise to the size criteria under North Andover's jurisdiction for under the bylaw. I have gone through and discussed some earlier sort of filings with the town of North Andover that might have similar circumstances. A lot of sites, and not just in North Andover, but in a lot of towns, were shut off, if you will, in the 2008, 2010 downturn of the economy, and quite frankly, I'm getting back out on sites that were abandoned in similar fashion. In the town of North Andover, there was a project on Osgood Street. I referenced that decision by the commission in 2016, about a year ago. It was in August 2016. On that site, while the intent was different for the construction of those areas, and that site, it was a site similarly approved with an order of conditions. They got started, construction happened. They started to stub out and create some stormwater detention basins. They never finished. They certainly weren't completed. They weren't signed off on. There was no certificate of compliance saying these meet the state stormwater criteria. But they were pockets, if you will, on the landscape that had developed then in subsequent time in similar fashion to the abandonment timeframe for this site, 2008, 2009, I believe, wetland characteristics. I use those as a guide to help me get through my discussion with the pockets on this site. While the intent may have been different, the physical activity that occurred on the site was exactly the same. We had an approved order of conditions. We had erosion control in place. The previous owner went in with machinery, scraped, moved soil, and created wetland pockets. So that is what we have here. I've come before the commission respectfully to ask that you approve on this ANRAD process, the bordering vegetated wetland boundary, which substantially is the same as what was originally improved, with some minor changes as a result of Jen and my site visit. I made some adjustments to that line, but it's substantially the same. And I also asked the commission to find all of the wetland pockets on the interior of the site non-jurisdictional as well. And I think that's all I have to say on that.
Very good summary. Thank you, Patrick. Jen, you've been deeply involved in this. You agree with that summary?
I do. In comparing the two projects, it seems very similar. I think there are some slight differences, as Patrick noted, but both projects did close out, basically, and stop working before the projects were ever constructed. So it does follow along in the same lines. One sort of followed along that it had 1210 Osgood had constructed their interim stormwater management, and that's what turned
It was
into
construction BMP
right.
that reverted.
This didn't get quite that far. I think they were more just clearing and grubbing the site, taking topsoil off. So, what's left there isn't quite as defined, and it can't be referenced to the site plan per se, but very similar in that it's construction related.
Okay.
I mean, I was on the site when it was under construction back in the day. I reviewed the wetland restoration when it was installed, and it is in place. So it wasn't wetland before.
Okay, right.
We had warned the owner who was abandoning the site at the time, though, that this could potentially happen, but it doesn't change the outcome.
Understood. Jack?
Just a procedural question. That area that you pointed out, Pat, that is highlighted in orange, that it looks like it was a fill area, was that intended?
That's the constructed access. So there's a bridge there, like a crossing.
So was that considered a limited project at the time, back when construction was active?
I don't believe they filed it that way because they did have a wetland mitigation for that, but
And it wouldn't have exceeded a threshold that they would have needed
Right.
a limited crossing.
it was about 650 square feet approximately of a crossing there.
And
But
they
had
have-
it exceeded the threshold, the reality was it was the only way into the site.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Yes, it's a substantial ditch, if you will, along
Yep.
Willow Street there.
Yep. That's Willow Street. I'm all set.
thank you.
Patrick, thank you very much for the analysis comparing the two sites. It was very clear, and appreciate all the good work you've done. Thanks.
Thanks, Deb.
Just on final summary, I mean, the 1,000-foot area sounds like it's got a potential to have some sort of value as a resource area, but you have to look at it with the sensitivity to the context to which it's surrounded by, and that is it's got this vast wetland network around it, and really what's what a resource area is this little pool in the middle of high ground, and to me, it's not of any value.
It doesn't rise to it's not a vernal pool, so that, it's too shallow, drains too quickly, so it doesn't have overriding ecological significance.
Very good. So I think we're ready to issue a decision if somebody would so move.
It would be to issue an ORAD confirming the line, which is I forget what I wrote it out as. Yep. And then we would just cite, as we did in the 1210 order, that areas delineated on the plan non-jurisdictional, and just list them out.
Okay.
So moved.
Motion made and second. All in favor of issuing an ORAD for A, B, C, and D, and excluding the other areas that are internal, say aye.
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 And that's issued.
All right, thank you very much.
So the next order of business is continuance. Entertain a motion to continue 1710.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second, continue. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that's continued. Next order of business is 242, 1715, 127 Tucker Farm Road.
Did we skip Foster Street, or is my agenda in the wrong order? 42 Foster is first, or
I don't,
not on your agenda?
Not on mine, no.
Well, it's
It is.
further down.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's the next item on
It's the next item.
Tucker's the next one, okay.
So we're on Tucker Farm?
Yes.
Good to see you again.
Michael O'Neill, again the engineer who had developed a plan for the replacement of the existing septic system at 127 Tucker Farm. When I was here the last time, we did not have a DEP file number. We do have now. There were a number of comments from the consultant to the Board of Health, and I've addressed all of those comments. And I learned this afternoon that they're making the recommendation to the Board of Health to approve the plan on one condition. I have not shown the property line to the rear here, so I believe that they're going to suggest that I could submit a property plan to the Board of Health to show the perimeter of it. It has an odd shape to it. There's a way up here, if it were drawn to scale on the plan. So I believe that I'm, in the next couple of days probably, or maybe at the beginning of the week, we'll hear from the Board of Health on the actual disposal works construction permit.
So as I recall, those were the things that were of concern to us, and at this point, it seems that minor plan revision for the Board of Health's record wouldn't change in any way the plans before us this evening, other than showing that property line. So
Right, that is correct. They had about 28 comments that came back, and there was only one comment on that had an effect on putting in a riser over the distribution box, but nothing has changed in the design in terms of the vertical, horizontal, and the finished grading over the system.
Okay. Good, we're all set, right?
Yeah, I spoke to the Board of Health, the Health Department today, and they seemed to think that there was nothing that would require us to have to issue a modification later or anything like
Excellent.
that. He did remove, there had been an extra line on the plan for a 75-foot, which wouldn't be on here, and that's gone. So I think we're good.
Excellent. Jack?
No questions.
No questions.
I love it when it goes this way. Entertain a motion.
Close an issue. would be-
Close an issue.
So moved.
Deb made the motion. Do I hear a second? And Doug second. All in favor, say aye.
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 And it's closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next order of business, 242-1711, that's 42 Foster Street.
So this one, they didn't even need to come. They did have a letter that the Board of Health's consultant had issued. They've addressed all those concerns, and that is all set with health.
Any questions?
No questions.
Right around the table. Entertain a motion to close.
Second.
Motion made by Doug, seconded by Deb. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And that passes unanimous. Next item, 242-1714, that's 865 Johnson Street, lots 1A and 1B.
So this one, too, you had asked for a revised plan, and I'm sure Mr. Dufresne can show you the changes made, but everything you asked for is now on there.
Good evening, Bill Dufresne, Merrimack Engineering. 2 weeks ago, when we were before the commission here, there were 5 or 6 items in revisions to the plan. You asked for one that a 25-foot no disturb permanent demarcation be put on the plan. So I modified the plan to show a 2-foot-high stone and mortar wall. Because of its length, it's very lengthy. I did it in 50-foot intervals with 10-foot breaks, so that we had, the ability for wildlife and other things to migrate from upland to lowland, and not create a dam or a barrier, because the site does grade gradually towards the wetland. So that's been added to the plan. Secondly, that the limit of trees and vegetation be shown on the plan, which we've added to the plan, and that affects how we show the erosion control and that no disturb wall, and that it doesn't interfere with cutting trees. Thirdly, a construction entrance to prevent siltation onto the roadways. We've added that to the plan. I've modified the construction sequence so that the issues of the replication plan be addressed prior to any construction. at the onset of the project. And then lastly, there was some comment regarding dewatering. I don't anticipate dewatering. All the construction is occurring above the seasonal high water table. Cellar floors are all 1 foot higher than the water table, so footings would be right at seasonal high. Only thing that could potentially invade the water table would be a water service. I don't anticipate dewatering for that, but I did in notation form suggest a siltation sock at the exit of the dewatering hose, and that hay bales be put around any drainage structures that they discharge to. That's essentially the revisions we made.
Thank you, Bill. You're all set, right? Any?
Yeah, I don't know what you think about the 10-foot breaks in the wall. That would not be standard. If it is for, drainage, wildlife movement, I guess I would just, you have allowed breaks before. The only one I can think of offhand is Hillside,
Yeah.
where you left the break for people to access the pond that was back there. There wouldn't be any need to access back there per se.
My fear is that a break in the wall looks to be intentional, almost granting permission to use it to go out there and do things like dispose of yard waste and whatnot. And it's really just the opposite of what we're looking to accomplish here. So I think we've been pretty steadfast in holding to a physical barrier that's continuous. And breaking the stone wall, even putting a post and rail fence in is not permanent. I think we've had issues with those in the past. So that's my take on that. Jack?
That's been our practice, for sure. We've been very consistent with that and with not having breaks, except for a particular reason. For instance, mowing of, maintaining areas that need to be maintained, preventing woody vegetation from developing.
Like meadows.
Yeah, little meadows and stuff. And again, as Jadden referenced, that path on the hillside development on one of those lots was a good reason that we granted an exception. But yeah, I'm familiar with this property, and I agree. I don't think there's any reason why there's a reason to go back and mow or do anything. So I'd be against the breaks.
Jen, I'm sorry to cut you off on your summary, but the break in the wall question is what caused me to do that.
Yeah, I was
Are
just
you-
trying to think of other reasons why, or if you did want to leave, a point of access on each lot that, maybe put a post or something. I mean, I guess the reason for access would be the strange thing. Why would someone be back there? I mean, if you wanted to walk or look in the
2-foot wall,
wetland.
it's not
you could-
insurmountable.
Right, yeah, you could step over it, so I don't.
I did not do it as a way to be contrary to what the commission
Oh, I didn't-
wants.
I wasn't
I did
implying
it
that.
because other communities generally, like, for example, we've used fences, a stockade fence, they want it 6 inches off the ground so that wildlife can migrate from wetlands to uplands. And my thought when I was laying this out on the plan and I saw the length of it, I said, I probably should do something like that. So we don't have any objection to a continuous wall. I was doing it for conservation reasons.
Thank you, Bill. That's good.
If there's something,
The other option could be to put large boulders.
if there's another permanent demarcation, we'd be happy to do that
But
continuous.
allows animals to go between.
Okay.
All set.
That was your only comment? It was
That's
on the wall
fine.
itself?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah,
Deb?
I agree with the two of you. And Jen, what about the boulder thing? Would that be,
Well, I mean, in those spaces, if they wanted to put a boulder with the marker on it or something, just so it kind of left a spot. I think migration, in this particular instance,
Again, we have to look at it, I don't want to use the word context every night, but you have to look at the surroundings. If we had another resource area where they were looking to move between, would be one thing, but what they would move to would be people's backyards
and toward the road.
into the road.
Right.
And
And there are
two
other,
things we wouldn't want
there are
necessarily-
other ways on this lot
yeah,
to move around.
So I think it's a fair thought that Bill had, and I appreciate that, but I think in this instance, it's something that we probably are going to vote against and just
What
require.
about post and rail in between the bricks, at the brakes with your markers on them. It's a good method of mounting the markers.
I'd be more inclined to go with the boulder.
The boulders?
In the middle,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you know, I'm talking about large boulders, something that somebody, you know, half a ton boulder, right?
My experience with the boulders has been that people go out and buy these $700,000-$800,000 homes, and they don't want an ugly boulder wall.
Yeah,
They
right.
want a pretty wall.
Yeah, it's gonna-
And that's why I didn't go with that.
Yeah, yeah. Then
So
connect.
in that case, we'll do a continuous.
Can connect the
Yeah,
wall, okay,
continuous
very good.
wall. I agree.
And that was it, the only thing left open. I think the debate is pretty much, in the discussion's over, not so much a debate, and I can entertain a motion to close initial decision.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And we're closed, thank you.
Thank you.
And do you want to just, rather than have them revise the plan, just require the
We'll
continuous
condition
wall in the
it,
condition?
we will condition it.
Okay, so
Condition.
you don't have to
Yeah,
revise.
the plan will, you don't need to revise
All
it.
right. Very good, thank you.
Yeah. Next order of business is, we'll take these simultaneously. It's two separate filings, 242, 1708, and 1707, both for 271 Stevens Street.
Oops, I do.
Just while Kurt's setting up by way of summary, at the last time this was heard was about 4 weeks ago. Subsequent to that, there was a site walk that was conducted by some of the individuals on the commission. No public attended that site walk. We looked at it, we kind of assessed it. We had permission from the owner and the owner's rep to be there to do that. And the applicant continued at the last public hearing, and my understanding is that they had also taken some input from us at the meeting they were at, and came back with this plan, which is before us this evening, which is revised in accordance with some of the discussion that came out of that meeting, so.
Okay,
Like I
for
said,
the record, I'm Kurt Young from Wetlands Reservation Incorporated. To sort of recap, I think Chair has done a little bit of that. I trust everybody had a chance to take a look at the site, and, okay, good. We filed this additional site plan with you showing a revision to the proposed driveway at this location here on the right-hand side, if you will, of Lot 2. It requires an easement on Lot 1. It also requires a significant amount of wall construction and grading. We've added a stone bed, basically an infiltration trench along the road to pick up drainage from the driveways, which comes down into a low spot before it gets to the road, and that would convey that drainage down along the proposed swale. We've also added infiltrators on both houses to pick up roof runoff. The one I will mention right here is just on the cusp of the 50-foot. This is within the 50-foot, and realistically, while we're well above the wetland boundary at this point, these infiltrators will work to the degree groundwater will allow it. But during the summertime, when you do want good recharge, groundwater will be low, and they will in fact infiltrate better. But we'll sort of get what we can get out of that, given the proximity to the wetlands. But one of the things we found when after we filed this plan was that, quite frankly, the cost of the walls and the grading is very high. And I think we still feel that the modification that we did proposed last time with a driveway on the other side of the house, so on the left-hand side at this point, actually was a better configuration in terms of location and grading. We did spend some additional time on that design, and as a result, ended up with a design which we think actually deserves some discussion. And I'm not saying, approve it tonight, I'm just saying discussion. It's a smaller driveway. We've moved it, the entrance over towards the house so that there's less work in the 50-foot. We're down at a point where we've got about 423 square feet of driveway in the 50-foot, and we're taking out basically about the same amount of the existing driveway. All of that drainage doesn't go towards the wetland, it comes down towards the street. It has much less severe grading in the 50-foot no-build zone. And we offer it up to you simply because we think it's a heck of a lot better plan from the standpoint of the wetland and site plan. If you're not inclined in going in this direction, fine. If you are, we'll drop back and file that and have a formal hearing on it at your next meeting. But at this point, we want to try to move forward, and that's why we have given you the other plan. It's a very expensive plan. It's got a lot of grading associated with it. I'm not sure that, quite frankly, it's unreasonable. No, it's not as reasonable as this one is. And there really isn't a great deal of impact to this wetland when you consider its current condition of being very disturbed. Because we had an opportunity to see the soils out there. They're very poor. There's a lot of surficial material in here that we want to clean out, replant the 25-foot completely. We have proposed a wall with breaks in it, and we have reasons for that. And I think they're legitimate and real. One is we want to provide access back there. We think it important to carry out our invasive species program and to be able to make that a perpetual condition and allow access back in there to do that. We're talking about clambering over a 2-foot wall. Think about it. I don't think it's an effective way to promote access to that area for any purpose whatsoever. Plus, wildlife do course through this site. Unfortunately, they've got walls on all sides, and to create a new one seems inappropriate under the circumstances. So wildlife passage, cost, other issue, and simple access to the rear for purposes of carrying out the invasive plant control. So that's another alternative that we're hoping you would consider. But the one that we have in front of you this evening is this site plan showing a driveway on the right-hand side of the wall of a house on lot 2, grading of this location, a stone bed in this location along the right-of-way to promote the drainage from any water that comes down through there. That also, because the water on the road sheets across the road, this takes care of melting snow and just precipitation going across the road as opposed to taking it down through the topography, eventually down to a culvert and under Stevens Street. So I guess, Mr. Chairman, I'll leave it to you to decide how you want the commission to act and how you'd like us to respond.
I'll try to navigate through the alternatives. Normally I would look to you for a recommendation, but I think we understood what the recommendations were the last time around, so I think we'll...
I didn't see, they didn't present that plan. I don't have a copy of it, so
Okay.
It's not something that's been considered. I would just point out, we still haven't seen the alternative that brings the driveway into the front of the garage on that side of the house, which would be far less grading and far less impact and also not be in the 50. But the rest I think you can address.
Unfortunately, it's not a safe estimate.
We actually observed
Out of that driveway.
the site distance when you come in front of this lot, and that, this plan doesn't do the curve justice of the roadway alignment coming from downtown. It's treacherous, so if you were
Right, they
backing
would-
out of the Salem,
They
onto
wouldn't
Stevens
need to
Street.
back onto. There was still room for a turnaround,
Oh,
which
okay.
was
There would-
not
there would need to
not
be that.
addressed. Right.
That was not practical for that turn. That your preferred plan for lot 2. Are you open to a gravel driveway?
Yeah. Yeah, we wouldn't have a problem with that.
So what we walked away of
Perpetuity.
this is, the discussion was when we were on the site walk of what the various alternatives were to look at that.
That's
That was
what's
one
there
of the
now,
alternatives
basically,
we-
is a
we
gravel
considered.
driveway,
Right.
crushed stone gravel.
Gravel and remain gravel forever, as a continuing condition or surviving condition.
Don't see a problem with that, no.
And we weren't unified in that discussion. We certainly saw that it needed to be a pervious surface, and gravel over time will compact, and it needs to be maintained, and people don't maintain their gravel driveways, they just add more gravel to the surface
Yeah.
over time. So your original proposal was a pervious pavement, and, you know, and if that's what is still on the table for you folks, then we would like to see a designed cross-section submitted of what that pervious pavement, because it's not just the surface that works, it's the whole substructure that makes it pervious.
Absolutely understand and agree.
Also, there's this maintenance of an impervious driveway that needs to be maintained. You gotta clean it,
Yep, yep,
so it
vacuum it.
remains pervious, so there's gotta be
And
some,
a future homeowner can't say, I want to seal the driveway,
yeah.
because it doesn't work anymore.
So-
So those types of things become perpetual conditions.
That's fine. No, if that concept of pervious paving is, you know, associated with this design plan, I think you can agree with that, Ron, too.
And that's why I say we're going to navigate, because it seems to me that out of the alternatives we've seen, if pervious pavement is still on the table, this is the option that we're looking at with regards to the alignment of the driveways.
Yeah, it's probably a safer alignment than,
Beg your pardon?
it's a safer alignment than the.
This alignment,
Yeah.
much safer, yes. It eliminates the easement on lot one, eliminates the grading. On the grading, I mean, I look at it from a wetlands perspective, as you do, that we have to raise the elevation of the house in order to meet the grades over here to make it work, so it's a problem. But what that means is all of this water is shedding towards the wetland. With this configuration, we don't have to.
Doesn't do that.
And I think that's been our, one of the bigger pluses, so, making this pervious pavement, we don't have a problem with that. What Jerry just suggested was pavers on stone dust.
Not pervious.
That's not pervious.
Okay.
That's not pervious.
With 2 feet of, I think it's 2 feet of crushed stone.
You can't use stone dust, though.
There-
Stone dust
Well,
isn't pervious.
whatever fills that up.
So there's a cross-section.
Yeah.
Go to UNH's
Yeah, right.
pervious pavement site.
I understand.
You can just download that cross-section and put a detail on the plan and submit it. That's what we're looking for.
Okay.
If it's stone, there's width of crack, and the subsurface gets deeper to absorb whatever gets, there's a whole criteria that needs to be met
There also should be a maintenance schedule.
in a maintenance code. So
That's a
lay that out.
Fortunately, now you can get a vac truck, they're available, they're around, so you can, they actually
Yeah,
are
but
servicing.
you need something needs to be written down so that whoever owns the property, is
So,
that something that?
As I said, we were going to navigate through the alternatives. Having narrowed down where the discussion is going to go, let's talk about the invasive vegetation control, because we broke it down in 3 separate elements. Buffer zone, the brook area itself, and then the buffer zone on the opposite side. In the 25-foot area, we saw that there was some benefit, some real benefit to invasive control, invasive species control. In the brook itself, in upland from the brook, further back in the lot, if you go further west, as you will, we saw no need for that. So we're talking about doing very limited invasive species control, only up to the limit of that first,
Basically through the 25.
the first band, 25-foot band, and eliminate the breaks in the wall, solid continuous wall across. That's how we arrived at the logic of leaving the driveway where it was with the pervious pavement. And did I summarize our discussion pretty well?
Yeah.
I have a nod from my client that that's fine, and from my perspective, I think it's a good decision. And what we would like then is, I don't think you can adequately, we do have an electronic copy of this, but with us, but we don't have copies to actually file tonight. But we'd like to obviously make some changes in it and bring back to you with some details on it.
Right, we're going to need to see the pervious pavement cross-sectional detail.
Yeah.
We're going to need to see an O&M plan for maintaining that pervious pavement in the future for cleanliness.
And the
We're going to see the revised wall showing it with no breaks in it,
And we'll take the invasive.
and modify the invasive control plan.
I think also too, that swale seems to go all the way
Ooh.
to the wetland, whereas this one stops. I'm not saying extending it isn't worthwhile, maybe up to the 25 or where you get the grade to drop it, but that seems to go pretty far.
I asked the same question
Okay.
earlier today, and it's because of the elevation of the driveway entrance.
Yep.
This would typically daylight earlier.
Yep.
Because with that plan that you're looking at here, the driveway on lot 2 is at a higher elevation, so that it outlets earlier. Yeah,
So is this a
This
pipe or is this a,
arrangement has to chase the topography
That's an
down
open
here.
stone line swale.
what
Is what
goes
you're proposing.
across the driveway? Is that a grate or something of that nature, or where the swale crosses the driveways? How's the water not running straight off the driveway and into the road?
Well, Let
It's in a pipe.
me get a detail on that. Phil
Okay.
will not be here this evening, but I think that's a good question, and we can certainly address
I
it.
envision it as country drainage, what we used to call country drainage.
Right.
This is a little different because the road is graded in the shoulder very poorly. It's graded so as to force water across the road, okay, from snow melt, things like that, which I think is a really horrible idea. What this provides is for a drain for melting snow as well as runoff in the driveway to force
Intercept.
down, okay, along the edge of the road. And if you look at the detail, I'm sure you take a look at it, there's a little catchment area on each side of the driveway. So the answer to your question, Jen, is the water sheets off of the driveway on both sides into the stone swale, which goes underneath the driveway. You looking at the detail sheet?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I just put it up for them, although mine seems to be slightly different than yours.
There's a green line on here, which is a proposed grade, and you'll see that it basically extinguishes as you get down to the end, so it's daylighted. So while it has cover on it in certain portions of the stretch in the road easement, all right, it's daylighted so the water can come out of it at the lower end. All right, and it's also daylighted at the individual driveway locations.
So you would need a waiver to be in the, you wouldn't to be in the 50, but you would to be in the 25.
But I think as a BMP, as a practical BMP, it's something that they should
Right.
request a waiver, but I don't think we're going to take exception to it.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. They get the ability to prove they need it between the 25 and the 50, but that exemption goes away when in the 25. So they do need to request the physical
Yes.
waiver is all.
Yeah.
And then
The-
anytime we've approved these, were you going to get to the DPW
I was just
aspect
going to
of
say,
it?
shame
Okay.
on me.
Yeah.
And what you're proposing is in the town right away, so you're going to need some sort of approval or some sort of permission from the Public Works Department to make an improvement to their roadway.
Right, and I talked to Phil Christensen about that earlier today, and because we do meet their criteria of a drop in 4 inches, 6 feet off the road, which is to get the water to positively drain off the road and not go up onto it, we meet that criteria, and the other one is to improve it. And I think.
So we're going to need a letter to that effect from the engineering department or
Okay.
the Public Works Director, just to complete the file. We have a catch-22 where our order conditions say that this order conditions doesn't grant any other benefits or any other approvals beyond those subject to the Wetland Protection Act, of the local bylaw. But in the same token, our regulations say you must have all permits applied for prior to filing. So we're not saying you need a permit from DPW, but you need to produce some sort of permission that this is going to be allowed.
As long as we focused on a design that everybody.
We needed to
is
narrow down.
Getting
You
down
could-
and
yeah.
narrow down to, we can do that. Keep in mind that in the general conditions of the order of conditions, not the ones you write, but the ones that DEP puts in their standard, it requires that all local and state and federal laws, rules, regulations, permits, licenses, et cetera, are met before you can do anything. So they sort of cover what your concern is in the general conditions in the order already.
Excellent.
I think the commission just strives to not have to have you come back. If DPW doesn't like your idea or wants changes, then
Understand.
we'd prefer not to have you.
don't want to see
renotice
me
and do
anymore.
all the
You've
good
got 2
stuff.
weeks
I
to
can
do
deal with
that,
it. Yeah.
okay?
Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
We made some headway, thank you.
Okay, I think that's productive.
I don't know if there's any abutters.
Any butters to this project? I'm not good at this chairmanship thing, so I apologize. I'll entertain a motion to continue for both of those filings. Motion made by Deb, she was louder, and Doug seconded. All in favor, continue, say aye.
Aye.
The 23rd.
23rd. Okay.
I should say I'm not quick enough.
Well, you were closer to me. Just heard you better. Okay, thank you. Next order of business, 242-1712, it's 255 Hay Meadow Road.
Hay Meadow? No.
Yeah.
No, I don't know who's out in the hall. No, it's not Hay Meadow.
So, then,
I would just continue on with the public hearings.
yeah,
I
we'll
can-
we'll leave that.
We can address it
We'll hold
if
in
they don't-
abeyance to
no
the end of the
one
meeting.
shows.
We'll come back. 242, note file number 146 Main Street, it's Elm Realty Trust. Is this, are you representing Hay Meadow, or?
No, this is
This is Elm.
146.
We're getting close, so we thought we'd come in.
No, it's you.
That's you, you're up.
Yep.
The people before you aren't present, so you're on.
Is the plan in the submission? I'm kind
Yeah,
of scrolling through.
Very, should be at the,
I suppose I should download it before I scroll
should
through.
be at the end, or it could have been in a separate PDF.
I seem to only have the one, so I'm going to assume it's in here somewhere.
If it is, it will be the very last page. I have no fear, we have a plan too.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. I don't know how well you can see that.
Well, I think it's still busy downloading, so it's likely to. But you can get started.
So I'm Ann Martin with LEC Environmental. This is Scott Cameron from the Warren Cameron Group, representing the owner of 146 Main Street. This is for the replacement of a failing sewer pump station. And I'm going to just, I think, talk to the presentation board even though it's on the screen. So this basically is the project site with the access way. It's basically a stone's throw from where we are right now, just right next to Osgood Pond. There is this access way, driveway that comes in that provides access to 146 Main Street. And there is a secondary access that comes through the Sutton Pond Condo Association that provides access to the lower level. It's a split-level building. When you walk in at the driveway, you're on the 3rd floor. When you come in the back, you're down at the bottom floor. There's also a paved tennis court / basketball court that's right here. And right here at the corner of the building is a sewer pump station that's basically in a wooden building structure. And essentially, the pump station is primarily above ground or very shallowly buried. And so over the years, there's been problems with failures. It's not insulated. And what the proposal is to replace this pump station. And so as far as resource areas, Osgood Pond is down here. This shows the boundary of the pond or the BVW. There is Kachitchawick. Did I say that right?
Kachikawick.
Kachikawick. I knew I was taking a risk.
There's another town with a similar name.
The brook, Kachitchawick Brook, flows in this direction. There's the bank to that, which creates the 100 and 200 foot riverfront area, and then there's a wetland system over here. This was actually flagged when Scott and I first went out there just to walk around and take a look at it. It had been flagged by Norse Environmental. The flags were still there. I looked at them. They seemed to make sense. So his office just survey located those flags and put them on the plan to establish the resource areas. There's also FEMA floodplain to the brook and to the pond. No work is occurring in the FEMA floodplain. Basically, we're doing work in the buffer zone and in the riverfront area. And it's pretty minor. It's about 500 square feet in the riverfront area, basically to remove what's there and replace it with a 1,000-gallon double pump station, the same kind of deal, but it will be buried and placed below grade, so it's properly insulated. And then there's a manhole in this location that will be abandoned, the pipe will be capped, and then the connection to get into the system where right now it pumps up the street is this orange dashed line all the way to Main Street. They'll basically sleeve a new line inside that line, and then they'll do some work at some of the manholes. One of the manholes is going to be replaced, and they're going to put a flushing chamber in that manhole. But the scope of work is pretty minimal. Basically, this area right here to get that work done. So there's not a lot of staging that's necessary. It's we're taking something out, we're putting something in. Jen had emailed me a couple questions. One was about staging, so we'll have a dumpster that will be staged on the pavement. Any of the pump chambers or any of the new equipment will be stockpiled there. We don't really have a lot of soil material to stockpile. There may be some sand or gravel that gets backfilled in, but it's maybe 40 cubic yards, so it's kind of bring it in, take it out. So there's not a large staging area. She also asked me about erosion controls, and we have erosion controls at 3 locations. One along here, which is basically along the back of the building. One along here between the edge of the pavement and the river. And then the third one is up here where this excavation will occur for at the manhole for the pump station, right around that area right there. That's the short version. If you would like more detail about the design and the function of the new system, there's your man right there. He can tell you all about it.
Very good. Jen?
I mean, this is a solution to a long-standing problem, so.
Yeah. I was going to say several years, but be way beyond that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, longer than I've been here. So my only question, and I brought it up kind of late in the day, just because the project had been filed with the planning department.
Oh, right.
And then it was withdrawn, and so it's not in front of them. And I don't really know the reasoning, but again, it's one of those things. We don't have a DEP file number, and we'll have to, at least it didn't when I looked. But
Oh, I have a deed.
Oh, you did? Okay. But anyway, it hasn't been formally filed with them.
What is that file number? Yeah.
The DEP file number?
Yes.
2421716. I got it off of there online.
Thank you.
So he did file for a modification to the special permit.
Oh, it's on there. I don't know why I'm just we did have it.
Wasn't on the agenda, it's
It's-
on the recommendations.
We have a great new admin, but we're not up to, we're totally not, what I used to think happened all on its own, turns out it wasn't magical.
That's okay. I always look too before I come, so we're all set with the number. He did file for a modification for the special permit. The Sutton Pond Condo Association did not feel like a modification to the special permit was required. So I think he had difficulty obtaining a signature page or their sign-off. Because he owns the building, but the land around it is owned by the condo association. So as a result, he withdrew that.
So maybe
I
nothing
sent
is
this to
required?
them and was able to get a signature. So I'm standing here. So that's my understanding. I have not been involved in a lot of that, but I did contact Craig and ask him, is this what happened? And he said yes.
So maybe it's needed, maybe it's not needed.
So,
I guess
I don't know
the
what would happen
caveat
with
would
that.
be that if, something changes and they decide to close, that we could keep it open at
What I
least for the 2 weeks.
don't want to do is I don't want to open up old wounds that may have healed somewhat. And there's been a lot of animosity between the two parties, and
Right.
whether it's real or whether it's just a way of getting even with each other, I don't know.
I just let planning know that this was before us
Right.
and that we would, be acting, likely positively on it. We don't need to close tonight because I do need to draft an order of conditions, and that wouldn't be issued for 2 weeks, so it does,
Same end effect, yeah.
yeah, if we close an issue at the next one, it's the same process. And it just gives everybody a chance to figure out what's needed,
Right. Well, and your permits always say
must.
you can't start work until all Local, state, and federal permits are
I
required.
just don't want to
so
be
even if you,
stepping on any toes in my
Right.
office where they thought something was coming. We're acting, I just wanted everybody to be in the know, and I didn't really get around to that until today, so.
Jack, any questions?
Yeah, actually, I do. One comment and then one question. The comment is, I may be alone on this, but I think the biggest potential impact is to Kachikowick Brook. And that seems to be the area of the site where you are going to be doing some stockpiling, backfill, whatever, small amount. But I think that is where I would, make sure that we have adequate erosion control, and Jen's a good judge of that, but just to make sure that we, that more sensitive area is adequately protected and then some in the project. So that was my comment. My question is, are there going to be 2 pumping stations on this project, or
Lead
is...
lag. Single station lead lag pumps in that?
So, good evening, Scott Cameron with Moore & Cameron Group. It's a duplex pump system, so there are 2 pumps in the tank, but just 1 tank. Just a little, what we're going to, if it wasn't clear, the excavations here, as you called out, we're going to run a new, smaller pipe, 1.25 inch, through the existing 4-inch. And we know we can do that because we ran a camera in the street all the way down to that bend right there, and then back up from this way to that bend. So we know we can't get around that. That's why we're putting a manhole there. And we put another one in between. We might have to add another one there. But the whole idea behind this is to keep the earth disturbance as minimal as possible and set it. We're talking 20 cubic yards, 40 at the absolute max, and that's total excavate, put back in. It's a very minimal, and it won't be stockpiles. They'll excavate next to the trench, put it next to the trench, backfill, and then they're done. So they won't be hauling material around anywhere.
So the function of the manholes then is for the run of the line?
It's the run.
installation?
It's a long ways to go, and if they ever have to get into it to maintain it, 1.25 inch, we want to make sure we have some access points along the way to make sure we can get at it in the future.
I'm clear. Thanks.
Deb?
No questions.
Doug? I got I'll start with a comment and then lead to the question after that. So it's not a road and it's not earthwork. You're digging up a dam. Do you have what kind of experience do you have digging up a 150-year-old dam?
Well, the excavation will be about 4 feet deep, and we're not really getting down below that water elevation. And the way this was built, there was an original dam, and then at a certain point, they added another 10 feet or so onto it. And that's when they built this road going across it.
So you'll be above the dam structure and below the roadway surface?
We're going to be right at that water elevation with the bottom of this manhole. So we're not really get down into any area. We're going to have some hydrostatic pressure concerns. And as a fail-safe, I do also have a dam engineer in my office, and we do dam work through Army Corps of Engineers, et cetera. So we are taking a close look at this, and it's the reason why we didn't want to do any open excavations in here primarily. But the fact is, we're going to have to get in and access at some point, and we'll be treating that with care.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And the follow-up to that question, to that comment was access. So are you going to be doing all the work from up on the roadway surface, reaching over the embankment, which is quite a good lift? Or are you going to be lifting equipment down in?
So there's actually a bridge here, which we have been assured you can bring small equipment over this. So the equipment we're talking about is maybe a backhoe, mini excavator, bobcat.
Around the back of the condo
Around the
building?
back. So we'll actually
All right.
be working down here with the equipment, and then we'll bring it out.
Okay.
They'll need a small crane, just the one that's mounted on the back of the flatbed to drop the structure in, but this isn't a heavy equipment project.
I think out of all the years of sewerage issues, that this is a solution that's beneficial to the resource area in the long run. So I appreciate that. Any questions? I think we're all set to continue, entertain a continuance.
Okay.
Were there abutters on this one? Again, I didn't call in the round. I'm lucky tonight.
Yeah, so I will draft this, and it will be ready to be approved, and hopefully you guys can have a conversation with the planning department, maybe as to, or someone can, about what's required, if anything.
So continue for 2 weeks?
Yeah, that's 23rd of August.
Yep.
I move to continue?
Jack made the motion? Oh, they already made it?
Yeah, I did.
We're ahead of you. I'd like you to take a
All in
vote.
favor of continuing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we're continued. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to call 242-1712, 255 Haymeadow one more time.
I don't think it needs to continue, but I would take, we have, I know, 30 Ironwood, and what's the?
We have some folks here looking just for, General,
That is not on the agenda this evening.
I was told the seller was going to, but
They called us and talked to us about that certificate of request, but we don't have anything. The request hasn't been made, nothing.
do you know if it was today or not? So
There were calls, but there's been no formal filing with the commission.
there's no
so-
file, no plan submitted, no?
No, I don't know that an as-bilt's required. I just know that they've called and asked about it over the past 2 days, but certainly nothing got on this meeting agenda. And we made that clear to at least one of the attorneys who called us today. So, sorry about that.
So that is not on the agenda for this evening. So the
Yes.
next possibility would be
Ironwood.
August 23rd.
Oh, yeah.
Is when that would be heard at the soonest, assuming they do what they need to do.
Right.
Okay?
We told them
Sorry.
that the filing deadline for that was 7 days before the next hearing. So that was a phone call we had today with someone. Again, I
Well, he
wasn't,
said he was coming, and obviously.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, that made you sit through this. Hope you learned something.
Hi, good evening. John Guiney, 30 Ironwood Road. Just thought I'd give you a little background on this project. Probably around last August, we came before the commission with a much bigger project. It encompassed a larger patio that was going to be rebuilt in the back right side. Went through a lot of issues, got pretty far down the road. Costs started going up and up and up, both with this process and the construction process. We pulled it way back. What we pulled it back to was just replacing, as you can see here, the back patio, which is currently crumbling. It's railroad ties. It's underneath a porch. It's really not even a patio. You come out of the basement, you step onto this long deck that sits underneath a deck that goes off the first floor. It's cinder, gravel, railroad ties that are rotting. We're looking to replace that. We're looking to repave the current driveway, not outside the current footprint, within the current footprint. Do some walkways, replace the walkways that are currently there. This was all resubmitted and approved back in February. However, when Hayes Engineering stripped all the stuff off the old project, the much bigger one, they stripped too much stuff off. Primarily what they stripped off, if you look at the back section of what's underneath the back porch, there was a little piece that stuck out from the original piece, and that was taken off, and then a retaining wall next to that was removed. And so when Jennifer came out and met with our contractor was like, hey, some stuff is missing here from my design. We found out that Hayes had stripped too much stuff off, and so we're here, as you can see, and I don't know if you got a chance to look at Hayes' letter, looking to make some minor adjustments, I guess from my perspective, I don't know what they are from your perspective, Jennifer, but from a layman's perspective, adjustments to the order of conditions, I guess you call it. We
Right.
filed everything with the Registry of Deeds. You've got the bond. I guess I'm the dumb guy in the room here, so Hayes was unable to attend this evening.
so basically what happened was Kale went out to do the pre-construction, and the landscape architect you have the landscape architect's plan too, I think, but had this great plan, which Kale, being new, was looking at every detail and said, well, this isn't the plan I have. So they had filed a notice of intent for a bigger project, and it sort of, rolled and got bigger and became more than they wanted to do. And when they brought back the project, basically what was put before you was they were going to rebuild the patio and repave the driveway. And we almost said, like, geez, this should have been an RDA, but we were at this point, so we just issued the order of conditions. So I don't think what they're doing, sort of goes beyond the order of conditions that we issued. Certainly everything that's in that order
Just
is
cleaning up the
covered.
record.
Yeah, I mean, there was no additional landscaping, walkways, and planting beds that you see on the revised plan. Those weren't in, they were in, I should say, some portion of them were in the original plan that was submitted to you, but as the owner stated, when the plan came back to you, it just showed basically patio and driveway. and none of the sort of things they were still anticipating to be part of the project, the landscaping features. So now those are on your site plan as well as in the landscape architect notes. It's sort of, I think there became a disconnect
So the
between
sidewalks that are there-
engineers and landscape
Yeah,
architect.
when this thing was much bigger, and when they stripped it all back, I didn't pay attention to what they submitted. Hayes Engineering stripped way too much off. So the sidewalks are there now, we're just having them redone. But they keep calling it patio, I wish it was a patio. Underneath the porch is being redone. There's a slight extension on that where there's some planter beds. I'm redoing my driveway, fixing the walkways, replacing a crumbling patio, I guess you'd call it.
Rosie,
So Jen, this submittal is adequate
for a modification.
for a modification
yes.
request, so yeah, that's all that we need to do. Sometimes we ask people to revise plans, but no, we've got what we need,
Yep.
but we need to clean up the record on that. So are there any questions?
I have none.
Doug?
No question.
No questions. So I think I'll entertain a motion to grant the request for modification and entering these documents into the record.
Second.
Doug made it and Deb seconded. All in favor of granting the modification, say aye.
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 Opposed? You've got a
Thank you,
modification.
have a nice evening. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And nobody else is in the room, so we're going to move pretty quickly now.
So, Hay Meadow, we can definitely go back to. He emailed me and asked if he should attend. I only have electronic copies of everything he submitted, so we do need site plans. And you do have what you had asked for on 255 Hay Meadow, this is the after-the-fact approval of the wall.
The wall, yeah.
Is that you asked for an engineering letter, so there is an engineering certification letter in your packets now, if you want to take a quick look at that.
A lot. Just the retaining wall up by the house?
They did work, it's hard to say what, there was work all along the driveway to kind of stabilize the driveway and the edge of the driveway.
So is it the bridge and the house?
No, the bridge is existing and not been touched.
Okay. Let's see, this guy.
So without diving into this in great detail, it sounds like he's done what we've asked. We're concerned about the stability of the wall.
Yep.
The engineer summarily says there's some areas where we're concerned about stability, this needs some attention. Is that what the applicant is asking the commission to do, or is he just,
No, so this was an enforcement order, so,
well, it was an enforcement order, but we also asked him to file, didn't we?
right, the after-the-effect approval of his sort of enhancements to the retaining wall that was on his property. It looks like basically what he did was, or not him, but whoever he hired, came in with a bucket load of stone
Sure.
and dumped it over the edge.
So the engineer, echoing Paige's concern, Cale's concern.
Kale, yeah.
Cale's concern is concerned that there's some areas that are unstable, and some additional work is required. So the engineer's report says there's additional work, but is the applicant asking to do that additional work?
No, I think that he's seeking after-the-fact approval of the wall. When Kale went out there, she saw that some of the boulders had gone off and gone into the wetland, and just said, you know, is this thing stable? And we asked the same question in the meeting, and he,
It's not a stable repaving.
I think we recommend continuance. We didn't know the intention of the applicant. You've got an engineer that we were concerned
If
with.
it's not a stable revetment,
Yeah.
then he hasn't completed, he can't get a certificate of compliance or anything like that, but it's not done.
Let alone us
Done
grant
correctly.
permission to leave it the way it is. So I
Right.
think
I
we,
mean, that's not acceptable.
right. So he
It-
needs, there's more work he needs to do.
I think it basically recommends that he chink in some of the larger boulders with some smaller stone, I think was the recommendation in there.
Sounds like the contractor didn't know how to build a revetment.
Right. There was a revetment there. This was sort of improving
Augmenting it.
upon that, yeah. But the thing we did ask
So
for
to
on
move
this.
this along, I think we only have two choices, really, right? Well, three choices, counting denial, but that's not a choice. To take the engineer's report that's part of the record and require through our order conditions that this work be carried out, really not our authority to do that, or to continue and let the applicant be present as we tell him that's what he needs to do. Well, not the applicant, but, applicant's rep. Is there any other choice? And I'm a little hard pressed to take an engineer's letter, structural engineer's letter, and order somebody to
I think
implement the changes.
applicant needs to come in.
Well, it's one thing to say it, but it's another to design it on a plan and present it to us, and I think we've not,
Well, I think that the
Reach
concern
that
that
step
we need
yet.
to clarify is that if the engineer who reviewed the situation out there, what's his recommendation specifically? To rebuild it?
No,
Repairable?
No,
That's not what
he's
some
kind of
areas.
saying it at the end.
Some areas.
Yeah, there's some areas. that
Some
need to be
areas, he does
repaired.
quantify about 8 to 10 of these boulders. So even if we were to order this be implemented, there's not enough detail in this for us to order anything.
Well, I
Right,
think there
right.
needs to be, the applicant's gonna come in here and he's gonna have his hissy fit about, that he, and it may be true, he may not be in a position where he can afford to do any of this stuff. I have no idea. But, if you have an unstable situation and he doesn't wanna do anything about it, then, if the structure that's there is gonna fall apart and threaten a wetland, then it needs to be stabilized.
This board is the
And
limit of
where do you-
ridiculousness. If it was sands and soils, we wouldn't approve a project that didn't have adequate protections to the wetland. This is boulders falling down and thus affecting perhaps the stability of the slope into the
Well,
wetland and documented to that
Right.
effect.
Yeah, we're all saying the same thing, I think. His engineer is saying it needs work, but we don't have the detail to approve the work that is
The
needed.
work that needs to be
Continue.
done, so you would
Yeah.
need,
I'll get to his engineer.
For
I told
him
him
to hire the
he asked if he should
engineer
come tonight, and
to come
I
up with
think
the
I tried to
details.
imply that he should be here, so.
Absolutely right.
which he does, he probably is not prepared to do.
So I'll entertain a motion to continue.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Jack seconded.
So
Well,
I
I
will
was a part of
continue,
this
and I'll
one.
get in touch with the engineer to get us more detail about what he thinks needs to be done to stabilize the wall, so we can issue an order of conditions that will basically result in a certificate of compliance.
Yeah.
Moving on to 255 Hay Meadow, the COC. I do think you can approve that. This is for the original construction. I mean, I don't know if you want to just hold them both off until someone's here.
Yeah,
But-
hold it off.
Okay, so I'll continue both.
I think that's a good
So
idea.
moved.
Second.
Motion made, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that passes.
Okay, so
Thank you.
that puts us back at
That's
the EO release for 0 Elmwood. Sorry to bounce all over.
Sure.
But you have a copy of his submission today, paid his fee for removal of an enforcement order, and we've been to the site twice during the or more than that, during the cleanup, and the subsequent revegetation of the lot. They did a great job, and it looks good.
So do we actually issue a document?
I'll
say that you
issue a
comply?
letter, basically.
So I'll entertain a motion to issue a letter noting compliance with the enforcement order for this project.
So moved.
Motion made and
Second.
seconded. Doug. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, 242-1237, certificate of compliance request, 122, 124 Katuitt Street.
On this one, at the last site visit, there were some issues with the plan and some issues when we went out to visit the site. There's a swale that runs under the driveway for this duplex that was basically all filled in, and there was, the head wall needed to be repointed over the driveways. There also were 2 decks shown on the back of the plan, when in fact only one of the units had a deck. So the plan was revised to show that one of them now just has a patio at the back. Wetland markers
This was
weren't
on
up.
the as-built plan, these
Showed
discrepancies?
a deck, and there was no deck. But there is a patio
Everything
there.
else not here.
Yep, so, the only issue of sort of non-compliance is there's 2 propane tanks at the back of the lot, outside the 50-foot no-build zone, and they service the house, so they weren't buried, they're just above ground. I mean, needed fuel of some sort, and they're way at the rear of the house. Rear of the lot line, actually. You could see there's some fencing back here in this area on the plan.
Oh, I'm seeing the propane tanks, okay.
You see it there on the plan?
There's 4 circles
Yeah,
next to
way
each
at
other,
the
right?
back property line.
Center back property line, on the Sullivan property line.
There's fencing in front of them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So at this point, I
I
think
mean, it's
they're-
kind of embarrassing to say that there were so many errors in an as-built plan. I mean, it's either there or it isn't. That's what's embarrassing. In the end, by coaxing them to submit a revised plan, we've got what we need.
We do have
So I
what
guess
we need.
I guess it's in compliance.
The structures are in compliance, what's out there is in compliance at this point, so.
I'll
certificate
entertain a
of
motion to issue a
compliance.
certificate of compliance.
So moved.
Motion made and
Second.
seconded. Doug. All in favor of granting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's issued.
1049 Salem, we're a little perplexed. Donna left it for us, like on top of the file, so we put it on the agenda. I'm not really sure. This was before you a while ago. This was 1049 and 1053, the 2 houses on the corner of Salem Street that were constructed. When this one came, we issued one to the one next door, but when this one came before us, the wall across the back of the property hadn't been constructed. It's now constructed and probably can get a certificate of compliance. We just don't have a revised as-built in the revised engineer certification, so I don't know if somewhere the ball dropped on this, and I don't know what Donna was doing to follow up on that, but basically we put it on the agenda thinking it should have been here, when in reality I think we need more information, so I would just
So since
take-
it's on the agenda, let's continue it to the next meeting. That's a 242-1614 certificate of compliance request.
So moved.
Motion made and
Second.
seconded. Doug. All in favor of continuing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's continued.
Okay.
Okay, and we still have that, I guess we've got an update on clarification of the right of first refusal under Chapter 61A.
Right, so the new owners have expressed their intent to continue 61A, so they're leaving it in, basically, and there will be no reason the town would have right of first refusal should they ever choose to remove the, and town council has approved that and said no action is needed, so.
There we go. Propose we take no action.
Then we just have
We
our
just-
3
decisions.
decisions.
Is this consensus? Is that him?
It's No,
near
it's
there.
not. It's down closer to where George Wright lived. Right at the corner of, by Harkaway.
Oh, I thought it was, I thought
Not
it was the other.
Harkaway. Yeah, it is Harkaway, isn't it? Cuts across there. Corner of Salem and, not Harkaway, let me think it up.
It's the big hayfield on Marble Ridge.
Marble Ridge is what is the one I was thinking
Oh.
of. Marble Ridge and Salem,
Oh,
right at the corner.
Just before you get out to Salem Street, before you cross Dale, right?
Yep.
Across from the substation,
Yep.
the little one. All right, so which decision do we have on there first?
Tucker?
Tucker Farm?
1715.
All right, my copy of the order of conditions does not seem to be here.
You want to borrow mine? I'll share with double check.
Yeah, just so we can review it.
We have a plan with the order of conditions. Are we doing that now?
I think it was just meant to be
Reference.
the packet for this particular filing. So,
So there was some disposal of materials.
Yep.
They pledged to, no, we had asked them if they want to do it ahead of time or part of the pre-construction, and it was agreed
right,
pre-construction.
pre-construction, right, so it says 34 is extensive dumping of yard waste, trash, and debris was noted in the wetland resource area during review of the delineation. The materials shall be removed by hand and disposed of properly by the start of construction. It says 2. Always good to reread these. They are using trenched and staked silt fence as their erosion control. I don't really, the work is all in the flat front yard, so I don't really have any concern about that. Probably better not to have a lot of hay around. I do require them to have extra bales, and then 1,500 for the bond. They have, I'll have them permanently mark the no disturbance zone or the top of slope, which is, or, the existing edge of tree line.
Is this replacement, septic system replacement, or part of a sale? Or is it-
Yes.
It is, so, yeah, then the markers are important for the new barn.
Yeah, especially with all
New
the
owner.
dumping that went on
Yeah.
out there. We wouldn't want to see that kind of thing again. No dewatering. Construction access will be over the existing driveway. No stockpiling within 50 feet. They basically only have the front yard to work in, so I think he said during the hearing that they were going to be trucking most of the material off-site. And then all of our standard continuing conditions.
There used to be a general condition, maybe still is, that we just gloss over, but obligating with the conveyance of property, there's some sort
The
of...
Form A affidavit, yep. Where we catch them, we require them. It's easy to do with new construction. When someone buys the house someone just built, we make sure
Yep.
they fill that out. If this doesn't sell before this order is wrapped up, then the house is on the market, but we try to do those things, but
But if
it
there's
only
a COC
takes...
issue, that's it.
Yeah, it might be beyond our knowledge that...
Okay. But if it's part of a sale, my suspicion is they'll be requesting a COC pretty quickly.
Right.
All right. And everything else is pretty standard, right?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions? You made a typographical,
Yeah, it's as
Change.
amended
so
technically.
entertain a motion as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor of granting, say aye.
Aye.
Issuing, say aye.
Aye.
Next one, 1711, this is Foster Street.
Yeah, I don't know how my copy of the order got...
Again?
Yep.
I was just going to give you the next one, too. I'll deal with Deb.
Okay, I can have both.
Okay.
Okay,
So 42 Foster. On this one, we didn't require removal of the yard waste because it was, mostly like sticks and things, and they were down below a retaining wall where I couldn't even get down there to review the delineation, never mind have somebody get down there to get things out. So we just said it was noted in the wetland resource area during review of the delineation, no additional materials shall be deposited in the resource area, no disturbed buffer, and the existing materials shall be allowed to degrade naturally. It was a much more natural situation than any of the two where we've required removal of stuff. Most of that stuff was not natural. They are using a compost filter sock, and again, most of this work is kind of in the front yard.
$1,500 bond.
$1,500 on the bond. So then also on condition 50, the edge of wetland and this is a much older home, so the current edge of disturbance is literally a retaining wall, top of slope type situation, so they would just monument up there. There is no 25 per se. And then the rest of it is pretty standard.
Jen, Deb and I noticed that on condition 48, the erosion control monitor, that's only in the case of an emergency.
No, this would be a site monitor during construction. I mean, that's the standard practice is while
Because they're so close, yeah.
they're doing the work. All of these current septic systems are in the 50, up to the 50. So basically, these are short monitoring periods. We
Sure.
could do something like, a storm event only. We try to reduce them as soon as possible,
But you're right, they're all waivers from the Board of Health, and they are closer, so it's all the more reason that we should be concerned. So,
right,
yeah,
and while they're doing the
that makes sense.
massive digging and earthworking, we have them out there, but as soon as they're done, we reduce it to storm event only, because these things are usually stabilized in like 2 weeks, so.
Okay.
Is this one of those lots that drops off quickly down to Mosquito Brook floodplain?
Yeah, to the floodplain. The
Yeah.
Mosquito Brook is a
It is
long way
further
away.
out,
Yeah.
right, yeah, I know, it needs it.
It's one of the first houses on Foster Street, like the third, I think, maybe, on the left.
On the left, those are the ones.
Any questions or changes? And we didn't change anything.
Nope.
So entertain motion to issue as drafted.
So moved.
Second.
Doug made and Deb. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And that's out. Thank you. And last but not least, 1714.
All right. So, the condition 35 is the, removal and restoration of the historic dump area. They were proposing only a filter sock on this site, but given all the work that they're doing, I would say backed by trench siltation fence. So I added that to condition 45.
So this one, we want to be careful to condition that
The wall
be continuous and that the gaps as shown on the plan are not approved. So where that belongs, I don't know if that's part of condition 51, or should it be a standalone condition?
I don't know where that condition is. It's probably in the wetland marker condition.
Yeah, that's condition 51.
51.
But it's,
That's a general condition.
but I think it should be a separate condition, so we should probably introduce a new one and just renumber the remainder.
Mine isn't in the right order, so, wait, 31, 29, 52.
Are we missing? I think we're
I
missing
think a page or something
Yeah, we're
is
missing a
missing.
page.
Missing, yes.
Because we don't have during
54,
construction
then it goes to
conditions.
70.
36 goes to 30. This one's complete.
Is it?
I think so, front and back.
No, 8 and 9 are missing.
Yeah, mine's missing 8 and 9 too.
Yep.
Are you missing 8 and
Do you have
9?
page 8 and
Actually, we're
9?
missing,
No,
Do you have it, Doug?
no.
Oh.
And my copy
we're
is,
missing 9, I have 8. Oh, 9 and 8, they're up, they got stapled incorrectly. They're inverted.
2, 3, 4.
Mine reads 7, 8, 10, then 9, 11.
I
So just
don't even-
reverse that second last page.
I don't even have 8
I
and
don't
9.
have that. I don't have any 8.
But it should be in the condition that, that has the wetland markers on it, should say that shall
That's
be
condition
monuments
51.
with a stone wall.
That's condition 51.
Yeah.
And I'll just put condition number 51, continuous stone wall.
We only have part of 51 on mine.
I only have part of 51 too, so. But I've got it. I'll make sure that happens.
Maybe you should.
And then, again, this site has a lot,
Great
they
idea.
added the construction entrances, all that. So this site has a lot of work that's outside of buffer zone, so they have stockpile locations shown. Thank you.
There's still the pagination issue that you have the reverse one.
Yep. So 41. So delineate the edge of the 25-foot no disturbance zone with a dry laid field stone wall approximately 2 by 2. And I'll just say the wall shall be continuous.
Yeah. I'd like to say, go so far as to say, the record plan showing gaps in the wall was not approved by the commission. Just be very
Okay.
assertive in that regard. Because we all know the contractors have these sitting in their excavators.
Got you. Okay. Oh, and what did I do? I bond on this was, I did require that they, do as-built foundation plans. We'll make sure everything's in the right spot.
3,000 bond?
Yeah, and that's
For a
usually for
single
two
family?
single-family houses, and on portions of this, it's only garage and driveway, so
Yeah.
should be plenty. Ongoing stormwater maintenance for maintenance of the infiltrators. All right, as amended.
So moved to approve as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And it's approved.
All right.
Excellent. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
That was a quick one.
That was unanimous.